Alice Harris had always believed she had a nearly perfect life. At 35 years old, she had everything she had ever dreamed of: a loving husband, 2 wonderful children, and a beautiful home in the peaceful suburbs of Austin, Texas. She had met Adrian, her husband, in college, and their love story had been the kind that people envied. He was charming, intelligent, and hardworking, a corporate lawyer with a reputation for being dedicated and ambitious. Alice, on the other hand, was an elementary school teacher, known for her warmth and kindness. Together, they built a life that many would consider ideal. Their home was filled with laughter, the walls decorated with pictures of family vacations, birthday celebrations, and milestones they had achieved together. Their son, Elliot, was 10, a curious and energetic boy who loved soccer, while their younger daughter, Molly, was 6, always eager to follow in her big brother's footsteps. Family weekends were sacred: movie nights with popcorn, road trips to nearby lakes, and dinners where stories from the day were shared over homemade meals. Alice cherished these moments and never once questioned the stability of her marriage. But behind the perfect facade, cracks had already begun to form, cracks she had ignored, thinking they were just temporary. It started subtly, so subtly that Alice barely noticed at first. Adrian had always worked long hours, but lately he seemed more distant when he was home. He had stopped greeting her with the same warmth, his kisses on her forehead becoming a mere routine rather than an act of affection. Their evening conversations, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, had become shorter, less meaningful. He started coming home late more often, always blaming work, an important case, a last-minute meeting, a dinner with colleagues. Alice tried to rationalize his behavior. He was under stress. His job was demanding. It was normal for marriages to have rough patches. But then there were the other signs. Adrian had changed his phone password, something he had never done before. He was more protective of his phone, taking it with him even when he went to the bathroom. He seemed distracted, lost in thought, even when they were together as a family. And then there was the perfume, the faint scent of a fragrance that wasn't hers lingering on his shirt one night when he returned home late. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong, but she silenced them. Confronting Adrian seemed too terrifying, too real. If she asked, and if he confirmed her worst fears, her perfect life would be shattered. So, she convinced herself that she was overthinking, that love sometimes felt distant, but never truly faded. Conflicted and anxious, Alice did what she always did when she needed guidance. She turned to her mother, Claire. Claire had been Alice's rock throughout her life, offering wisdom and support in every difficult moment. After Alice's father had passed away years ago, Claire had moved to Austin to be closer to her daughter and grandchildren. The two of them had a close bond, talking nearly every day, sharing everything from parenting struggles to career frustrations. When Alice confided in Claire about Adrian's distant behavior, she expected sympathy, maybe some reassurance. Claire, however, brushed her concerns aside. Men go through phases, she had said gently, placing a comforting hand on Alice's. Work stress can take a toll. Give him some space. If there was something really wrong, you'd know. Alice wanted to believe her mother. After all, Claire had always been the one person she could trust completely. But there was something unsettling about the way she said it, too dismissive, too casual. Had she really meant to comfort Alice, or was she hiding something? The thought was fleeting, dismissed as quickly as it had come. After all, why would her own mother lie to her? One quiet morning, while the children were at school, Alice sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee as she scrolled through her emails. Adrian had left for work earlier than usual, and she found herself alone with her thoughts, that nagging feeling still lingering in the back of her mind. That was when she heard the soft chime of Adrian's phone vibrating on the countertop. Normally, she wouldn't have even glanced at it. They respected each other's privacy, but something made her look. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the months of unease, or maybe it was just a cruel twist of fate. Whatever the reason, her eyes landed on the glowing screen. It was a text message from her mother. "I can't wait to see you again." Alice's breath caught in her throat. Confusion swept over her. Why would her mother be texting Adrian like that? They saw each other at family gatherings, at dinners, at celebrations. What was there to anticipate so eagerly? Her mind raced for a logical explanation. Maybe it was about a surprise they were planning for her. Maybe she was overreacting. But something didn't feel right. Before she could stop herself, her fingers reached for the phone. Adrian had always shared his passcode with her, but in recent months, he had changed it. However, as if by sheer luck, or perhaps his own carelessness, his phone was unlocked. And what she found inside would change everything. Alice's hands trembled as she scrolled through the messages. The conversation wasn't just casual texts between in-laws. It was something deeper, something far more intimate. The words on the screen blurred as tears welled in her eyes. Messages filled with affection, secret meetings, confessions of love. "You looked so beautiful last night. I wish I could have stayed longer. You're so cautious. No one will ever know. It'll stay just between us." Her heart pounded against her chest. Each message was a dagger, cutting deeper into her soul. It wasn't just an affair. It was an affair with her own mother. The two people she trusted the most had been betraying her for months, perhaps even longer. Every family gathering, every shared laugh, every comforting word from Claire had been laced with lies. Alice couldn't breathe. She dropped the phone onto the table, as if touching it any longer would burn her. Her world was collapsing around her, every certainty she had ever known reduced to ashes. How could they do this? How could she do this? Claire, the woman who had raised her, who had held her through heartbreaks, who had been her closest confidant, had been lying to her. And Adrian, the man she had trusted with her heart and soul, had been betraying her in the worst way imaginable. A wave of nausea hit her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't let them know she had found out. Not yet. If they had been hiding this for so long, she needed time to think. Time to decide what to do next. She wiped away her tears, took a deep breath, and made a silent vow. They won't see me break. Not yet. Alice sat frozen in her kitchen, staring at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. The truth had hit her like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her, but she refused to let herself sink. Her mother, her own mother, and her husband. The betrayal was almost too much to comprehend, but she couldn't afford to break down. Not yet. She forced herself to think logically. She needed to act normal. If she confronted them now, they would deny it, manipulate her, maybe even make her feel like she was overreacting. No, she had to be careful. She had to gather proof. Alice picked up Adrian's phone again, her fingers still shaking as she scrolled through more messages. The conversations were filled with coded words, but the meaning was painfully clear. There were mentions of hotel meetups, excuses crafted to deceive her, and even discussions about how to handle their relationship if Alice ever suspected something. Her mother had texted just a few days ago. "Alice doesn't have a clue. She trusts me too much. We just have to be careful." The words made Alice sick to her stomach. How long had they been laughing behind her back? How long had they been treating her like a fool? She heard the front door open. Adrian was home. Quickly, she locked his phone and placed it exactly where he had left it. Then she took a deep breath, put on a smile, and turned to greet him. "Hey, honey," he said, kissing her cheek absent-mindedly. "Long day at work?" She forced herself to smile. "Yeah, just the usual." And just like that, the game had begun. Over the next few days, Alice became a detective in her own home. She checked bank statements, looked through Adrian's emails when he left his laptop unattended, and even searched her mother's social media for any hidden clues. It was exhausting, but she needed more proof before she confronted them. She also started paying closer attention to Adrian's behavior. She noticed how he would glance at his phone and smirk, how he left the room to take certain calls, and how he always seemed to have a ready-made excuse for his absences. Then, one evening, she saw her chance. Adrian was in the shower, and his laptop was open on the dining table. With her heart pounding, she sat down and opened his messages. What she found nearly made her scream. There were emails between him and her mother, long, passionate ones that spoke of stolen moments, of how much they missed each other, of how they wished they didn't have to hide. There were even attached receipts from hotel bookings, some from as far back as a year ago. Alice clenched her fists. A year? They had been betraying her for that long? She copied everything onto a flash drive. If they thought they could get away with this, they were wrong. Alice knew she couldn't go through this alone. She needed to tell someone she trusted. She called her best friend, Rachel, and asked her to meet for coffee. Rachel had been Alice's best friend since college. They had been through everything together: bad relationships, career struggles, motherhood. If there was one person Alice could confide in, it was her. As soon as she sat down at the cafe, Alice blurted it out. "Adrian is having an affair with my mother." Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" Alice nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I have proof. I saw the messages, the emails. It's been going on for at least a year, maybe longer." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed Alice's hand. "Oh my God, Alice. I don't even know what to say. That's beyond disgusting." Alice took a shaky breath. "I don't know what to do. I want to confront them, but I want to do it the right way. I want them to know they didn't get away with this." Rachel's expression hardened. "Then let's make a plan." Alice didn't want a private confrontation. She wanted the truth to be exposed where neither Adrian nor her mother could lie their way out of it. And what better way than in front of the entire family? A few days later, she planned a small family dinner at her house. She invited Adrian, her mother, her brother, and a few close relatives. Everyone thought it was just a casual gathering, but Alice had other intentions. She prepared a slideshow, one that would expose everything. The messages, the emails, the receipts, even photos she had secretly gathered from Adrian's phone. When the night arrived, Alice played her role perfectly. She smiled, served dinner, and acted like nothing was wrong. But inside, she was counting the minutes. Then, just as dessert was about to be served, she stood up. "I have something to show everyone," she said, grabbing the remote for the TV. Adrian and her mother exchanged a confused glance. Then the screen lit up, and their secret came crashing down. The room fell silent as the messages appeared on the screen. The sweet words, the declarations of love, the betrayal in plain sight. Alice turned to Adrian and her mother, her voice eerily calm. "Care to explain?" Adrian's face drained of color. Her mother gasped, standing up. "Alice, this isn't what you think." "Oh, really?" Alice cut her off, crossing her arms. "Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my husband for a year. Maybe more." The rest of the family sat in stunned silence. Her brother looked horrified. Rachel, who had been invited for support, had her phone out, already recording the chaos. Adrian tried to regain control. "Alice, let's talk about this privately." "No," she said firmly. "You lost the right to privacy the moment you betrayed me. Both of you." Her mother looked desperate. "Sweetheart, please." Alice laughed bitterly. "Don't you dare call me that." Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't care. She had exposed them for what they were. And now it was time for the real consequences. "Pack your bags, Adrian," she said coldly. "And as for you, Mom, don't ever speak to me again." Then she turned away, finally done playing the fool. The room remained frozen in silence as Alice walked away. The only sound was the TV screen still displaying the incriminating messages. Adrian sat motionless, his face pale, while Alice's mother looked completely shattered. The weight of their betrayal was now out in the open, exposed for all to see. Alice didn't stay to watch their reactions. She walked straight to her bedroom, closing the door behind her. She leaned against it, finally allowing herself to breathe. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded in her chest, and the tears she had held back threatened to spill. But she had done it. She had taken control of the situation. A knock came at her door. "Alice, please open up," Rachel's voice called softly. Alice wiped her tears and opened the door. Rachel stepped inside and immediately pulled her into a tight hug. "You were incredible," Rachel whispered. "I've never seen someone handle betrayal with that much strength." Alice let out a shaky breath. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to. You just have to know that you did the right thing." Alice sat down on the edge of the bed. "What's happening out there?" Rachel sighed. "Adrienne is in shock. Your mom is crying, trying to explain herself to your brother, but no one's buying it. Everyone is disgusted." Alice nodded. "Good." There was another knock. This time, it was her brother, Daniel. "Alice, can I come in?" She nodded, and he stepped inside, his face filled with anger. "I swear, I can't believe this. Our mother." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't even know what to say." "Me neither," Alice admitted. "But I know I don't want her in my life anymore." Daniel sat beside her. "I support you, whatever you decide. If you want her cut off, then she's cut off. I'll make sure she knows that." Alice looked at him, grateful for his unwavering support. "Thank you." Later that night, after everyone had left, Adrian knocked on the bedroom door. Alice didn't answer. He knocked again. "Alice, please, just let me talk to you." She finally opened the door, arms crossed. "What do you possibly have to say?" His face was desperate. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But I love you, Alice. I never wanted to hurt you." She let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't just make a mistake, Adrian. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument. You carried on an affair for over a year with my mother." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I don't know how it happened. We got close and I was weak. I swear I never stopped loving you." "Spare me the lies," Alice snapped. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You had so many chances to stop, but you chose to keep going." Adrian stepped closer. "Please, Alice, don't throw our marriage away. We can work through this." Alice felt a surge of anger. "I'm not the one who threw it away. You did, the moment you betrayed me." She shook her head. "There is no fixing this, Adrian. I want you out of this house." His expression darkened. "You're really just going to give up on us? On everything we built?" "You already destroyed it," she said coldly. "Now leave." Adrian clenched his jaw, but he saw the finality in her eyes. Without another word, he walked out. Alice let out a shaky breath. The hardest part wasn't just ending the marriage, it was accepting that the person she had once loved was never who she thought he was. The next day, Alice woke up feeling lighter. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have to pretend anymore. She didn't have to live in denial. Adrian had packed his bags and left. Her mother had tried calling several times, but Alice ignored every attempt. She didn't need apologies. She didn't need explanations. She just needed to move forward. Rachel came over later that day with coffee and a plan. "We need to do something for you," she said. "Something that makes you feel free again." Alice thought for a moment. "I want to change things. I don't want any reminders of him or her. I want to start over." So that's exactly what she did. She filed for divorce. She blocked her mother's number. She redecorated the house, getting rid of everything that reminded her of Adrian. Most importantly, she started focusing on herself. For too long, she had put others before her own happiness. But now it was her time. And as she stood in front of the mirror, looking at a woman who had survived the ultimate betrayal, she realized something. She wasn't broken. She wasn't weak. She was free. Alice sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet. The absence of Adrian's presence was both a relief and a strange void she wasn't sure how to fill. She had spent years sharing her life with him, believing in their love, trusting him completely. Now, that trust was shattered, leaving behind a mix of emotions, rage, sadness, confusion, and even moments of guilt. How did I not see it? How did I not know? Rachel had told her 1,000,000 times that she wasn't to blame, that betrayal wasn't about her flaws, but about Adrian's selfishness. And yet, the thoughts persisted, haunting her in quiet moments. She got up and walked through the house, taking in every detail. The living room still had framed photos of their happy family. Their wedding picture was on the mantel, frozen in time, a reminder of the love she once thought was unbreakable. She reached for it, her fingers lingering over the glass, before she yanked it down. One by one, she removed every trace of Adrian. His clothes, his books, the cologne bottle he always left on the bathroom counter. She boxed them all up, sealing away memories she no longer wanted. But even as she removed the physical remnants of him, the pain lingered in her chest, stubborn and suffocating. Rachel arrived later that evening, finding Alice surrounded by piles of boxes. "Wow, looks like you went all out," she said, setting down a bag of takeout. "I needed to," Alice replied, her voice hollow. Rachel studied her for a moment before sighing. "You know, healing isn't just about removing things that remind you of him. You need to do things that remind you of you." Alice looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Rachel sat beside her. "For years, your life revolved around your marriage, your kids, and your home. But before Adrian, before all of this, who was Alice? What did she love? What made her happy?" Alice hesitated. She had been so consumed by her role as a wife and mother that she hadn't thought about herself in years. Before Adrian, she had loved art. She had spent hours painting in her college dorm, dreaming of one day opening a small studio. But life had taken her in a different direction, one she had embraced at the time, but now realized had slowly erased parts of herself. Rachel nudged her. "You should do something for you. No Adrian, no responsibilities, just something that makes you feel alive again." That night, Alice sat without thought, letting it sink in. The next day, she took her first step. She drove to an art supply store, the scent of paint and paper filling her senses the moment she walked in. It had been years since she had last held a brush, but as she ran her fingers over the colors, a flicker of excitement sparked in her chest. She bought everything she needed: paints, canvases, brushes, and set up a small studio in the corner of her living room. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And then she painted. At first, her strokes were hesitant, her hands unsure. But as the colors bled together, as shapes and emotions took form, she felt something shift inside her. The weight of betrayal, of heartbreak, didn't disappear, but for the first time, it didn't feel all-consuming. She lost herself in the process, letting the paint speak for her when words couldn't. Over the following weeks, Alice continued to reclaim herself. She redecorated the house, filling it with warm colors and soft lighting. She started jogging in the mornings, feeling the crisp air against her skin as she ran through the neighborhood. She even joined a yoga class at Rachel's insistence, though she spent most of it struggling to balance in downward dog. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when she woke up expecting to see Adrian beside her, only to remember he was gone. There were nights when she stared at her phone, fighting the urge to check if he had texted. But she refused to go back. One evening, she found an old box in the attic. Inside were letters from Adrian, love notes from their early days. She sat on the floor, reading each one, feeling a mix of nostalgia and bitterness. Was any of it real? She would never know. So, she took the box outside and burned it. As the flames consumed the past, she felt something in her chest loosen. She wasn't the woman who had been blindsided anymore. She was the woman who had survived. Months passed, and Alice slowly transformed. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, discovering new passions and rediscovering old ones. The divorce was finalized without much drama. Adrian had no grounds to fight her for custody after everything that had happened. He had tried reaching out a few times, sending half-hearted apologies, but Alice ignored him. She didn't need his regrets. As for Claire, her mother was a ghost of the past now. Alice had cut her off completely, refusing to let her betrayal poison her life any further. One afternoon, Rachel showed up at Alice's door, an excited look on her face. "I have a surprise for you," she announced. Alice raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" Rachel grinned. "Only if you're afraid of new experiences." Alice groaned. "What now?" Rachel handed her a small piece of paper. "It's a ticket to an art retreat this weekend. I already signed you up." Alice's eyes widened. You what? Hear me out, Rachel said quickly. It's just a 2-day thing, a chance to meet other artists, try new techniques, and get out of your comfort zone. You don't have to go, but I think you should. Alice hesitated. She had spent so long focusing on healing, on rebuilding, that she hadn't considered what came next. Maybe this was her next step. So she went. The retreat was held in a beautiful countryside studio, surrounded by fields of lavender and towering oak trees. The moment she arrived, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She spent 2 days immersed in art, connecting with people who shared her passion. She laughed, she learned, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like herself. And then she met someone. It wasn't love at first sight, nor was it some grand romantic moment. It was just a simple conversation over coffee with a fellow artist, a man named Daniel. He was kind, easygoing, and didn't push for more than she was ready for. They talked for hours about art, life, and second chances. And as Alice sat there, sipping her coffee, she realized something. She wasn't afraid of the future anymore. She had survived. She had healed. And now she was ready for whatever came next. The end.